But here's Ben Shapiro for a video titled "They Hate America," and here's their plan to conquer it.
America are not hiding the ball.
Okay, here we go.
They hate America, and they are winning. The Democratic Socialists of America are not hiding the ball. They despise America, like truly despise America. And now they and their allies are forming a winning coalition, not just in New York, but they hope across America. I'll explain who they are, what they want, and why you should actually be terrified in just a moment. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. So Zohran Mamdani is the captain now. 3 New York City congressional seats are now filled by DSA members or former DSA members. The DSA is the Democratic Socialists of America. We'll get to their actual platform in just a moment. In LA, another Democratic Socialists of America member may end up as mayor. In New Jersey, a former Al-Qaeda mouthpiece, allegedly, will likely win a congressional seat. In Michigan, a terrorist supporter will likely be elected to the Senate. In Maine, a dude with a literal Nazi tattoo will likely end up in the Senate as well. The rise of the hate America crowd is the story here. It's their pitch. Okay? It's not a bug. It's a feature. I know a lot of people are saying, no, they're winning in spite of all that. Wrong. This is how you win with young people. It's how you signal that you're not part of the machine. Now, again, the seeds of all of this were planted long ago. In 2008, the Democratic Party coalition turned into the Barack Obama coalition. By 2012, the Obama coalition had turned into the coalition of the oppressed. By 2016, that coalition of the oppressed was turned into the anti-Trump coalition. And now the anti-Trump coalition is...
Just to be clear, most of the time I stream and watch these videos because I don't have a lot of time to catch up on news and current events in sort of my daily life with being a dad and running a business and having my podcast. And so when I'm able to do these streams a couple times a week, sometimes I'm learning and listening, and I'll add some commentary if necessary. But just wanted to make that clear that I'm trying to learn from Sam Harris, who's left-leaning, Ben Shapiro, right-leaning, all this type of stuff everywhere in between about what might be happening.
Turning into the Hate America Coalition. Full scale, all masks off. Now, the seeds were always there. I cite this quote a lot from Barack Obama, from his book, his first memoir, because the guy has, I think, 3 memoirs at this point, Dreams from My Father, in 2007. I have a bad habit of actually reading political memoirs because it actually tells you a lot about the politician. He wrote this, quote, "I have seen the desperation and disorder of the powerless, how it twists the lives of children on the streets of Jakarta or Nairobi in much the same way as it does the lives of children on Chicago's South Side. How narrow the path is for them between humiliation and untrammeled fury, how easily they slip into violence and despair. I know the response of the powerful to this disorder, alternating as it does between a dull complacency and, when the disorder spills out of its proscribed confines, a steady, unthinking application of force of longer prison sentences and more sophisticated military hardware is inadequate to the task." Again, that sentence could have been written by Zohran Mamdani or by Chevalier or by any of the variety of Democratic Socialists of America candidates. And that is the entire matrix of thinking there, is that all suffering all over the world is the fault of evil capitalist free market systems. And that what you really need is an America that apologizes for its presence in the world, and that there is some sort of ideological solidarity between gang members on the south side of Chicago, who after all are victims of the system, and teens in Jakarta. And there was a reason that Barack Obama sat in Jeremiah Wright's church for decades, and that's because he agreed with Jeremiah Wright pretty obviously. There's also a reason that Barack Obama loves Mamdani, because Mamdani is Jeremiah Wright, except he's much more smarmy and younger and has a better beard. Bernie Sanders almost won the Democratic nomination in 2016, running against the Democratic Party as an open advocate of anti-American socialism. He won the youth vote outright. Well, now that Obama-Sanders coalition has turned into the Mamdani coalition, and it's going to keep getting worse. Here, by the way, is what the Democratic Socialists of America actually believe. Okay, this is their new platform. Abolish the Senate. Replace the president and the Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary chosen by and subordinate to the Congress. Defund completely.
Is this real? What the fuck is this? Replace the president and the Supreme Court, defund the Department of War, end sanctions on Cuba. Wow. Free Palestine. What the fuck does that mean? It's nothing. Palestine doesn't exist.
The Department of War. Abolish all prisons. Free Palestine, of course, naturally, because, and this is the omni cause, and all complaints about Western civilization must be projected into love for a pseudo-state that loves terrorism, loves it. End sanctions on Cuba, Venezuela, and Iran, naturally. Abolish ICE, grant amnesty for literally everyone, so open borders. Public ownership of all major corporations, and remake the elections nationwide. The ultimate goal, a Democrat Socialist Republic. And this is what their official platform. Now, in 2012, the DSA had 6,500 members. By February of this year, that was over 100,000. By the end of this year, it would be shocking if they don't have at least 500,000 registered members. Now, the thing that you're hearing from all of your sort of left-wing friends and from your legacy media interlocutors is that the DSA, all these Democrat Socialists of America candidates, are winning based on affordability. See, they're saying the thing. They just keep saying affordability. Here is the problem. That's not true. It's not true. They're winning primaries not based on affordability. When they get to a general, they might lie that they're running on affordability, but what's winning them primaries is a bunch of white college-educated voters. So, for example, Darya-Lisa Chevalier, who is a complete psychotic anti-American nutjob. She won her primary the other night with 32,790 votes. She won.
It is kind of wild, how much these people despise America, yet they can only do what they're doing in America. We go back to the FIFA thing, like all these people are in America from a bunch of different countries, and they're fired up to be here. And I wish we'd get back to a place where we had pride in our country. And I know things aren't perfect, and there's never going to be a perfect country. That just doesn't exist and never will exist. But there can be other countries that are better and doing better. And I think we've come a long way, and we've created something special, and we need to take pride in that. And we have all these candidates who want to tear everything down and ruin it, even though because they can only do it here in this country. It's just very interesting.
50 to 60% of the votes among younger residents, majority college-educated areas and higher income areas. So it was richer, younger, college-educated people. Her opponent, Adriano Espaillat, is a sitting congressperson, won about 30,000 votes. And this congressperson won 50 to 55% of the votes among lower income areas and majority Hispanic areas. So again, Chevalier is not winning the low income areas. She is not winning the minority areas. She's winning college-educated white people. Chevalier also did not win the public housing precincts. Espaillat won St. Nick, which is apparently a public housing project in central Harlem, by 40, even as Chevalier won the greater neighborhood by 30 points. Overall, Espaillat won New York City Housing Authority precincts by 24 points across the district. How about Brad Lander? So Brad Lander is the pseudo-Jew who was a member of the DSA and then dropped his membership in the DSA, but actually is still a member of the DSA, basically. Well, it turns out that even Dan Goldman won the public housing precincts by about 20%. Okay, so what do you notice? What you're noticing is that the Democratic Socialists of America is led by overeducated white people. That is what is happening here. And you can see it. There's a Pew poll that came out just a week ago showing what the Democratic Party looks like. And what it shows, unsurprisingly, is that membership in the so-called leftward progressives, the people who are the most left-wing, the Democratic Socialist crowd, is highest among whites. It is lowest among blacks. Unsurprisingly, actually, among black voters who vote for Democrats, by far and away, the biggest group is what you would call order and opportunity leftists, meaning people who are still fairly pro-free market, people who want some immigration restrictions but don't want total deportation, people who are relatively non-socially leftist.
How to build a CEO dashboard so powerful that you can manage your entire business from one Google Sheet.
And that is the biggest group among all Democrats, but among white people, disproportionately, they are far to the left. But this isn't really a racial thing. Okay, this is not about race. It's really much more about age. All right, coming up, Zohran Mamdani and his Hate America crew are getting ready to take over, not just New York, but like the whole country. They have a plan. We'll get into it. First, here's a thought experiment. Imagine printing out your entire browsing history from the last 30 days. Every website, every search, every article, every purchase. Already, the DSA is now ready to be the face of the Democratic Party. They're building a coalition, right? And the coalition is going to be national in nature. So here is Zohran Mamdani, a career useless person, an absolute ingrate.
Yeah, it seems to be always like, Hassan Piker and Mandami kind of, rich, wealthy people always want to go to a socialist system instead of where capitalism has helped more people get out of poverty than any kind of economic system ever. And they don't want that one. It always seems kind of the fake moral virtue of people who have money to want to care about the poor, but their systems never actually do help the poor.
A person who hates America is mayor of New York City, talking about how he's ready to be the face of the Democratic Party.
I think we can see from each of these candidates that they have exactly what it takes to succeed. And we've heard from Republicans time and again that they're going to try and make these candidates the face of the Democratic Party. To them, I say that we are ready for that, because for far too long, we have been told that it is not possible to fight for working people and win. These candidates have shown that they can. Let the Republicans talk about that more.
Okay, so again, he is going to make the claim that this is the face of the Democrat. Okay, so he pretends about affordability. As I just showed you, it's not about affordability. They're not winning primaries because they say affordability. They're winning primaries because they hate the country. Claire Valdez, who just won a congressional primary, this is the kind of stuff that she preaches in order to win a congressional primary, that the nation was founded on genocide, on the Bituation Room.
Being a dual national, how does it inform your politics?
Yeah, it's I think it does a couple things. I think like it ties me very personally to the fights for self-determination and sovereignty, from Puerto Rico to Palestine. I think it's so essential that we're standing in solidarity in those struggles. And I think it makes me think about immigration in a different way. We hear all these, white conservative men talk about who does and does not belong here. And look, this nation was founded on genocide and the mass displacement of people. It's just the history. And to say that some people cannot belong here, it's like, come on.
Again, they despise the country. To say some people don't, if you don't come here legally, and if you hate our country, you probably shouldn't be here. Claire Valdez also, by the way, is April 30th. She said that she wants to...
They hate it simply because they can complain about it. And when you complain about it, you get people to be on your side, because obviously there are some grievances that people have. And when you do that, you create sort of a grievance party. And you can all become victims about your grievances, and then you join together and everything sucks and everything is terrible. And then you never get out of the spot you're in, but you just complain all the fucking time.
Abolish pre-check and nationalize the airline industry. And they are just communists who hate the country. This is not some sort of giant secret. They just say the thing out loud.
My hot take is we need to abolish pre-check. I've got like a million beefs with the airline industry and the process of having to fly. We need to nationalize the airline industry. But let's start by abolishing pre-check.
What the fuck?
And so it's not just Claire Valdez. Daria Lisa Chevalier, who is probably the nuttiest of these people, which is saying a lot. She was asked if she was a communist on MS Now. And she said, well, if by communism you just mean basic kindness.
All sorts of Republicans ads to say, this is what you're going to get if you vote for the Democrats, a communist.
I think that framing is one that I've been very proud to be able to say I don't respond to, one in which I have been very intentional to say I won't be reactive. We are presenting a vision of what we're fighting for. And I think for far too long, we have had politics that is reactive to what Republicans are doing. What we need is Democrats who are actually going to present a positive vision, one that sets the tone for what we should be talking about, which is the issue of affordability, which is the issue of how our budgets are moral documents. For far too long, this reactive conversation of what we should be afraid of has prevented us from being able to have a politics of hope and a politics of life that Democrats can actually identify with.
Okay, so hope, light, and communism. That's what she's talking about. And of course, she's hiding it beneath all of this pseudo-academic nonsense jargon that she was taught over at Columbia. We'll get to that in a second. Now, again, this is what they believe. So the question is, how do they form a coalition?
Yeah, Columbia's a fucking cesspool.
For victory. Okay, so again, I hear a lot of Americans sighing as they listen. Okay, fine, so that's New York. New Yorkers are crazy. We know this. They already elected Zoran Mamdani. So they elect a few more crazy Congress people. So they elect a crazy senator over in Michigan, a person who hates America. So what if they elect a person who's an actual mouthpiece for terrorism, allegedly, over in New Jersey? It's just a few, like there are 435 members of Congress. There's 100 senators. There are mayors all over the country. What's the big deal? So how exactly do they take over? Okay, so I'm going to show you how they take over, what the actual plan is. So look at this poll data. Again, this is poll data from Pew, political typology by age. And it breaks down a bunch of different subgroups within each party. So notice the age bracket 18 to 29, which is, again, where the Democratic Socialists of America and the radicals are putting all their focus. Notice that age bracket. 14% of people aged 18 to 29 are what they call leftward progressive. That would be the DSA. 14% compared to 2% of people above the age of 65, demonstrating once and for all that the young always and forever will remain the dumbest generation until they get older. That's how it works. So 14% are basically openly DSA. That represents, by the way, 26% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents.
Wow.
26%. So over a quarter are basically DSA if you're young and a Democrat. Hey, then, how about the people who are the left out left, what Pew calls the left out left, people who are disaffected with the Democratic Party and feel angry at the Democratic Party and who are perfectly willing to join the outsiders. 25% of all Democrats under 30 are part of the left out left. Okay, so that represents, by the way, a sheer majority of Democrats 18 to 29 are either Democratic socialists, meaning like actual communists, or people who hate the Democratic Party and are happy to watch outsiders smack it around. That's a sheer majority of Democrats aged 18 to 29. Then you have a couple of other groups among people aged 18 to 29 overall. Now, again, overall, 14% of people, not just Democrats, 14% of people aged 18 to 29 are Democratic socialists. 19% are people who are disaffected Democrats, essentially, the so-called left out left. 14% of all people aged 18 to 29 are what Pew calls the tuned out middle. These are people who are basically low information voters. They don't tend to pay attention to politics. They sort of culturally see it on their TikTok. They listen to Joe Rogan or Theo Vaughn, that kind of folks. And then 9% who are the loyal liberals, Democratic Party voters. So the goal here is, and the proposed coalition for Mamdani is the DSA, that 14%, plus the disaffected Democrats, 19%, plus the people who don't pay attention and who voted probably for Bernie in 2016 and then maybe for Trump in 2024, the tuned out middle, the Joe Rogan types, it's like 14%. And then the loyal liberals, right? The people who are sort of the binary thinkers, Democrats who say, listen, I don't like all of this, but when it comes right down to it, if I'm forced to choose between Donald Trump and Zohran Mamdani, I'll choose Zohran Mamdani. That's 56% of everybody aged 18 to 29. That is the coalition they're looking at. And again, it's a youth-based coalition because the hope always and forever is that the youth will bleed up into the rest of the population. So let's break down this coalition a little further because it's pretty fascinating. So start with the DSA. Who's leading all of this? Who's leading all of this? Who is the DSA? As we pointed out, it is overeducated, useless white people. Some of them are white, some of them are not. But bottom line is, this disproportionately white, the professional useless class, they've been manufactured over the last 20, 30, 40 years in university classrooms. They've been majoring in absolute junk. They're unemployable losers who have never held a real job, but they did go to the best colleges for years and then more years, and then they can't get real jobs. So they end up as community organizers or agitators or political aides for crappy candidates who hate the country. The Democratic Socialists of America is a make-work machine for college education.
So essentially, these people just became, professional victims where everything is an issue all the time. They're tone policing, they're word policing, they're language policing. Everything is a grievance, all this type of shit. We need to have safety bubbles and all this type of stuff. And it's like they essentially became professional victims for everyone else except like for themselves, basically. Those are definitely the most annoying people to talk to.
Losers. That's what it is. And this is who these folks are. Claire Valdez explains to Zohran Mamdani, again, another useless person. Zohran Mamdani went to a solid college, and then he turned into a failed rapper. And that was his entire career path until he was elected to office in New York. He has never held a real job, never. He's an overeducated loser whose father taught at Columbia University and whose mom is a documentarian. He's a member of the elect in the United States, treating himself as though he's a member of the proletariat, which, by the way, is a common theme. If you're looking for the people who lead revolutions, never look at the actual proles. Don't look to the proletariat. Don't look to the people who are working in factories. They're busy. They got a job. The people who always lead revolutions are disaffected pseudo-intellectuals who feel disrespected and want to remake systems because they're bored and unemployable. It was true for everyone from Hitler to Lenin, and it's true for Zoran Mamdani as well. And it's true for Claire Valdez. So here is Claire Valdez explaining how she got into politics at Columbia.
That shift happened when I started working at Columbia University.
I mean, you can't deny that Ben is stating the facts here, saying important information that everyone should hear. And even people who hate him, you know, who are on the kind of the Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens train, because those people also have turned into people that hate America. So if you really love America, wouldn't you agree with what Ben Shapiro is saying here? But if you're so deranged by your Israel and your Jew hatred and your weird love and affection for Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, then you might be on the side of these anti-American lunatics because of the horseshoe theory. And it's so interesting to watch this play out in real time and how this is actually going to impact our country and the way people live.
It was a union job, and all of a sudden I had all this time. You know, it was my first proper 9-to-5 job. And that's revolutionary, I think, to so many workers who are used to working 2-3 jobs and nights and weekends. That's so much power. That power was something that I wanted to help win for other people. It felt like the most incredible gift in my life.
Okay, so she was working for Columbia University as a useless assistant, and she had extra time, and she started thinking about politics. She studied painting and art history at the School of Art Institute in Chicago. That's who this person is. Never held a real job, worked at a university, again, another make-work program for overeducated idiots, and now is leading the revolution. Or take Daria-Liza Chevalier. She started college in 2008. I want to give you her college history because that way, when you hear about her affordability problems, you understand where she's coming from. She started college in 2008. She went to Columbia. She graduated in 2016 with a degree in Middle Eastern Studies. Now she is in her 7th year of her PhD at CUNY in sociology. When I talk about career useless people who have never produced a thing of value, her name just comes right up. Here she was explaining, though, that this created affordability problems with her. Again, the idea that you...
7-year PhD in sociology. How long does it take to normally get a PhD? Obviously, it takes a while, but like, what the fuck?
You have an affordability problem because the system has failed you when you've been in college or grad school for half of your life is insane.
And as someone who has had to live with the question of whether I can even afford to stay in the city I love, as someone who has struggled with this issue of affordability, but yet seen time and time again my tax dollars, New Yorkers' tax dollars, be used to bomb children and families abroad instead of being invested in our communities here, I am tired of that type of politics, and I'm running because I believe my community deserves the dignity of a representative who is going to fight tooth and nail for the things that they deserve.
I have to say, Zoran Mamdani is absolutely unwatchable. Just the pasted-on fake grin everywhere. He's got this creepy Joker-esque grin every time he appears on your screen. It's really very, very strange. But
yeah, he seems like a really weird motherfucker. Yeah.
Again, those are the leaders of the revolution. Career useless people, pseudo-intellectuals, not particularly smart, but granted high degrees in useless crap, who now have extra time on their hands and they're going to lead the revolution. So that is the core group, 14% of the people aged 18 to 29, and about a quarter of all Democrats in the Pew poll aged 18 to 29. Already coming up, we'll get to disaffected Democrats and how they fold into the Mamdani coalition. Plus, we'll be having on recipients of the Medal of Honor to talk about what makes America actually awesome. First, people spend a lot of time these days talking about bringing manufacturing back to America, which, don't get me wrong, that's awesome. It's also worth noting the industries that never actually left in the first place. One example, America's beverage companies, the drinks people have grown up with for generations, who are just annoyed with the Democrats. Why? Well, because the Democrats are constantly promising the world and then failing to deliver. They yell about Trump, but they don't give you enough. It is very easy, by the way, to campaign from outside a party saying the party doesn't do enough. It works on the right. President Trump did this. It works on the left. The DSA is doing this. So here is the DSA head, co-chair, Gustavo Gordillo, saying, we disagree with the Democrats. Like, we're using them, basically. And this is, a lot of people are warm toward this because, again, they don't like the Democratic Party. They're Democrats, but they don't like it. And so what they're doing is they're weaponizing the disaffected. And again, that disaffected group for people 18 to 29, that is the second, that is the actual largest group. It's like 19% of people aged 18 to 29.
Our candidates run as Democrats. We're on the Democratic Party ballot line. We contest the primaries. And when they're in the legislature, they're part of the Democratic Party caucus. But we don't agree with the way the Democratic Party establishment organizes or runs its party apparatus. And so we try to build independence by focusing on volunteer-led movement. We think that everyone should be able to be trained and to become someone who can participate in the political process. And we don't really think that Democratic Party campaigns in the establishment are run that way. And I think you really see that difference in the races like we're having tonight.
Again, they hate the Democrats and they are running from inside the party to destroy the Democrats. And a lot of Democrats are very much on board with this. Here is another DSA co-chair named Megan Romer saying she's not a Democrat, she's a socialist.
We are explicitly socialist. We're not shy about it. We're not the Democrats who are like, no, we're not.
Right.
Stop calling us that. Yeah, no, you can call us that. It's fine. We're socialists. It's cool. We're not fighting for a kinder, gentler capitalism. We're not fighting to soften the edges. We're fighting to have worker control of every aspect of our lives, of our housing, of our workplace, of our communities.
Again, they're quite open about this, but the idea is they're going to recruit all the people who are unhappy with the Democrats. Harry Ensign points out that this is working. Here he is looking at the polling data, Democrats versus, say, the DSA.
The Democratic Socialists of America have a higher net favor rating than the Democratic Party does, at least those who are members of Congress. I mean, just take a look here. Dem Socialists of America, plus 17 points. Democrats in Congress, plus 4 points. No wonder that Dem Socialists are getting nominated across the political map in different primaries.
So we know that socialism, has never worked, but it's one of the most debated topics in economics and political stances. In a pure socialist economy, the government owns the means of production and centrally plans what goods are made, in what quantities, and at what price. Economists like Frederick Hayek argued that this is fundamentally impossible to do efficiently. In market economy, prices act as signals reflecting supply and demand. If a frost destroys orange crops, prices raise, signaling to customers to buy fewer oranges and to producers to find alternatives. A centralized bureaucracy cannot process millions of real-time consumer preferences and supply chain hiccups. Without a free market price mechanism, central planners end up guessing, leading to chronic shortages of basic goods like toilet paper or bread and massive surpluses of unwanted items. And then you have the incentive problem, and then you have the concentration of power and authoritarianism. And so that's kind of the issue of that. Historically, this concentration of economic power has almost always led to a concentration of political power without private property or economic independence. Citizens lack the leverage to challenge the state, frequently resulting in authoritarian regimes, political repression, and corruption. That is why socialism has failed every single time. But let's continue.
Because simply put, they are more popular than the Democrats currently in charge.
Again, attacking the party is a very, very good way of winning power. And you can see how kind of more traditionalist Democrats, even very, very left-wing anti-Trump Democrats, New York Attorney General Letitia James. I told you earlier, the anti-Trump coalition has turned into the Hate America coalition. Letitia James literally tried to sue Trump out of existence. That was her entire raison d'etre. And now she's being outflanked by Mamdani. And she said, quote, all of us are a little frustrated with the Democratic Party, but you don't blow it up. That's what MAGA has done. But no. That's the whole idea. You do blow it up. That is the entire promise. That is the pitch. This is why Zohran Mamdani says he's not worried about ticking off Letitia James. Here he was with Chris Hayes.
She said she and other political leaders she's spoken to are disappointed in Zohran Mamdani. All of us are a little frustrated with the Democratic Party, but you don't blow it up. That's what MAGA has done. What do you say to that?
I think, what is the Democratic Party if not its voters? And what we saw yesterday evening were Democrats across the city turning out and voting for a new kind of politics. And I've been clear time and time again that I believe the only majority in our country is that of the working class. And what we saw is that a focus on the working class, whether it's from Claire, whether it's from Daria Lisa, whether it's from Brad, is the kind of focus that New Yorkers want to see. And I have a deep amount of respect for my friend Attorney General James. And I also believe that these are the kinds of candidates that we need to see in Congress.
Okay, so again, running against the Democratic Party is a lucrative political strategy. Okay, fine. Now you have the third group, the people who aren't watching very closely, right? The Joe Rogans or the Theo Vaughns, who are perfectly happy, I am sure, to host members of the DSA and hit them with no difficult questions, but talk about how revolutionary they are and how they are really changing it up politically. No deep questions, no serious policy ramifications, but they do make cool TikToks. And as long as they're making the cool TikToks, the inspiring TikToks, and talking about the problems, which of course is the thing that the podcast sphere likes to talk about, they never like to talk about the solutions, but they do love people who will just complain about the problems with the system because now you're in the know and all the rest of this nonsense. So that
the system really means the Jews. That's what it means.
is a fairly large group. Again, for people 18 to 29, the tuned out middle, that's 14%. And then finally, you have the loyal liberals, right? The partisans. And these are people who, if forced to choose between the psychotic left and the Trump right, will choose the psychotic left every single time. This is why the Democratic Party has no systemic immunity to any of this. I mean, they haven't had systemic immunity to any of this for 25 years. Again, the seeds of all this were planted in the Obama era. It's just all coming to fruition now. Here's Hakeem Jeffries basically giving up the ghost.
You said Mamdani was not the future of the party. Do you regret those statements?
I think the future of the party is diverse and it's anchored in the fact that we've got candidates all across the country who are running to take back control of the House of Representatives so we can end the national nightmare that's taken place. Mayor Mamdani has been off to a great start as mayor. We have a good working relationship and that will continue moving forward.
Again, that the kind of traditionalist left, which represents for young people about 9%, the loyal liberals, the Democratic Party voters, who will choose, if forced to choose between Nazi tattoo guy and Susan Collins, they will choose Nazi tattoo guy because absolutely Susan Collins might sometimes vote with Trump. Now, Joe Scarborough, who used to be a Republican, right, a long, long time ago, he, for example, is trying to shy away from the fact that every single one of these New York candidates is preaching pretty much open anti-Semitism. And he says, no, it's really not about them. It's about Netanyahu in Israel, right? It's sure. If it were Naftali Bennett or Yair Lapid, who was prime minister of Israel, I'm sure that Zohran Mamdani would then be, moderately pro-Israel, probably. This is just a terrible take from Joe.
Hearing a lot of people talking about the anti-Semitism in New York City, and last night proved the anti-Semitism in New York City, and this is Mamdani's fault, this is so-and-so's fault, this is this left. No, it's not. It's really not. If you want to blame anybody for what happened last night, my opinion, if you want to blame anybody, Jonathan, I think you have to blame Benjamin Netanyahu. 4 years of maximalist aims, 4 years of ahistoric goals in the Middle East.
Okay, I'll just point out at this point, that's totally wrong on the facts. I mean, the fact is, what is this 4 years nonsense? Is he talking about like post-October 7th? Is that what he's talking about? Just a brief refresher. Israel's attacked on October 7th. Since then, they've destroyed Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Hezbollah also fired thousands of rockets into the north. Israel responded to that. Iran got involved by firing missiles at Israel, so Israel responded to that. And the Houthis in Yemen were firing missiles on Israel, so they responded to that. But it wouldn't matter. I mean, let's be real about this. It's such a silly argument. If you know anything about Israeli politics, you understand that actually Netanyahu right now is being perceived as too moderate. He's being run against from the right by people who are the erstwhile left. People like Naftali Bennett, who's not a leftist, he's sort of a centrist, as well as Gadi Eisenkot. But again, none of that matters. It's just nonsense. The reality is, obviously, Zohran Mamdani will remain as anti-Semitic and anti-Israel as possible. Same thing with Chevalier. Same thing with the rest of these clowns. Okay, but the point here is that all of the normie Democrats will fellow travel with the DSA if they have to. Now, there is a problem for the Democrats and this new coalition. It's still not enough. When you move outside that 18 to 29 age bracket, right? I told you 56% of all people aged 18 to 29 would be in that coalition I just described. But when you move outside of that age bracket to like the total of all available voters, that coalition starts to shrink pretty radically. Only 7% of all voters in this Pew Research poll would be leftward progressive Democratic Socialists of America. 12% would be disaffected Democrats. 9% would be the tuned out middle, the Rogan, Theo Vaughn types. 11% would be the loyal Democratic voters. Well, you don't have to be great at math to do the math here. When you total all of that up, that is only 39% of the electorate, which is a far cry from 50%. Why? What does that leave out? Well, it turns out that what it leaves out, if you go back to the chart, is one gigantic group of Democrats. In fact, the biggest group of Democrats. That biggest group of Democrats would be the order and opportunity left. The order and opportunity left, again, the hope for the Democratic Socialists is that the order and opportunity left basically continues to vote alongside the Democrats. If they were to do that, that would be a huge problem for the Republicans, obviously. Because, again, the order and opportunity left is, by the numbers, the single biggest group among voters. It is 18% of the entire voting base. So if you're able to stack 11 of that 18% on top, they end up with a majority, this coalition. But if Republicans are able to reach out to that order and opportunity left, which is the place they need to be reaching out to, then Republicans could win. Because again, people who don't hate capitalism, but do hate crime, who want the border closed, but are not huge on sort of the immigration raids, who don't love trans politics, for example, that remains the single biggest swath of Democrat-leaning people. Now, the right has fallen into this idea that this is like the working class coalition. It's about the working class coalition. But notice something. The socialist nonsense that's being promoted by Mamdani is not being supported by the quote-unquote working class coalition. What these people actually want is just moderation. That's all they want, meaning they want law and order, they want cops. They want immigration law enforced, but they don't want raids in their workplace. They want capitalism, but with the rough edges shaved off, right? That's the stuff that they actually want, probably. Okay, so it's an opportunity for Republicans. The more the Democrats push to the left, the more opportunity there is for Republicans. With that said, Mamdani and company pretending away the threat is silly. They have reached a tipping point. They have enough of the Democratic Party to pose a serious threat to the future of the United States, and they hate the country. And that is their campaign, is to hate the country. What an amazing video you just watched.
Actually, it was an amazing video. I think those types of videos are kind of where Ben Shapiro is at his best.